Mark, I found a couple of interesting stats that I think really paint the picture for what I believe a lot of our citizens are feeling at this particular point in time. And I know for my wife and I, it's gotten us riled up to the point that we are drafting letters and communications to our elected officials because we're pretty frustrated. I would encourage you to do the same if you feel the same as we do. Here's an interesting one that I recently found. This stat, Mark, came from a survey completed the week after the election, so just about a month ago. A third of the American surveys believe that neither political party is going to compromise before the end of the year in this debate or argument over the fiscal cliff. That was a month ago. I would bet that if that survey was done again, that number would probably be even higher because they've witnessed for a month nothing taking place but arguing and bickering.
Right.
So frightening. The other one that I found very compelling, it said a survey done in the summer of 2012, almost half of the Americans surveyed said the most important investment decision that they have ever made was to simply live within their means.
That's an interesting concept.
Pretty simple concept, but yet seems to be Congress has a hard time following that concept.
You know, a while back, Saturday Night Live had done a skit, and some of you may know the name Steve Martin. I'm sure you do. Might be something that the federal government, some advice that they might want to heed.
I like that.
Oh my goodness, there's more to it too. We may get to that later in the show.
I think we should.
Yeah.
We can learn a lot from Saturday Night Live, I believe.
That's exactly right. Obviously, that's making light of a fairly serious situation. And if we look at the federal government and what's going on, especially as it relates to entitlement, the Government Accountability Office had done some projections a little while back. And I think something that was really intriguing to me, if you look at the past few years and the deficit that we've run, 2011, we ran a deficit of about $1.3 trillion. We did the same in 2010, and then in 2009 it was $1.4 trillion. Well, if we continue kind of down the path that we're going on, and it's projected that sometime between 2030 and 2040, our mandatory spending will exceed our government revenues. Now, what that means is the net interest on our debt, adding in Medicaid, Medicare, and the Social Security, all of which are considered mandatory spending,
right,
that's going to exceed our revenues. That cuts out military, that cuts out, all these other, all of our non-mandatory spending that, many would argue is going to be, would be considered mandatory.
Yeah, that's problematic, Mark, and it kind of goes well with another Money News You Can Use tidbit that I brought in here today, and it talks about government expenditures versus government revenues. During the period of 1998 to 2001, the government spent approximately 18.5% of GDP on expenditures. The average over a 75-year period has been about 20%. However, from 2009 to 2012, that increased to 24% of GDP. Now keep in mind, in the period of 98 to 2001, we produced a surplus in the United States. We were generating more revenue than expenses. However, in the 4-year stretch where we increased that ratio, we actually were putting up about $1 trillion a year deficit. So not good.
Right.
And those numbers can't hold for long. As we head forward on this, Mark, there are some interesting things I thought we could also share regarding our GDP and its ratio to our national debt. And I've got a top 10 list here in front of me that I would like us to walk through. And I'm going to go through them. And as you listen to these names, think about what's happening in these countries' economies, their stock markets, with their income tax rates, with their unemployment rates, some of the austerity measures that some of these countries are fighting their way through. It's pretty ugly. Number 1 on the list is Japan. Number 2 is Greece. Italy is 3. Ireland's 4. Portugal's 5. Stay with us, Mark, and we will hit the rest of these in a moment.